Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Curated Careers. This is episode 2, and I'm joined by Emily Henderson. She is the digital content coordinator. Did I get that right?
Yes.
At the Kimball Art Museum in Fort Worth, Texas, in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And she is here to talk about her career path in the museum field in the arts and specifically in the media section because I know quite a few people were interested in maybe the non-traditional side of museum roles that we don't see every day. So, welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here. So excited to chat. I love talking about museums and my career. So excited to
So
get into it.
excited. So excited. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Emily's Instagram. If you don't follow her, I'm going to put her handle in the description. She's so stylish. I'm obsessed. She's a really good follower.
Thank
And
you.
hence why translates so well into your career path.
Thank
So
you.
let's get started. And I just love if you could give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and your background and maybe how you got into art in this field.
Yeah. So I went to college at UT Austin. I'm from Houston originally. So I like to say I've lived in all three major hubs of Texas at this point, between growing up, going to school, and now working in DFW. So I went to UT Austin. I studied advertising, that was my major. And when I went into college, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I loved the communications field and I was really interested in that. So I always kind of thought I would land at an advertising agency. I was obsessed with Mad Men during my college career. But it wasn't until I studied abroad. I was in the south of France in Aix-en-Provence, home place of Cezanne. And I just really rediscovered my love for art and museums, of course, being in Europe, being able to see all of the incredible art super close to where I was a really life-changing experience. And when I came back from that, I decided to kind of pivot a little bit. I added art history as a minor to my degree. And I think I would have gone double major if I had time and money. But of course, as you know, it can be a little expensive. So
Yeah.
I just thought I still have communications and I still want to do something with that. But now I'm really passionate about the arts. So when I got back, added my minor, I decided to start looking for internships in Austin that would kind of relate to marketing for museums. And I started off working at a small gallery called Flatbed Press. And then my senior year, I interned at the Blanton Museum of Art, and it was really amazing. I was actually there when they had the Ellsworth Kelly Austin go up, and that was super cool to kind of work behind the scenes in the marketing department whenever, all the press coverage was coming in from that. And that just really solidified, my decision that I wanted this very niche career of working in the marketing department of an art museum. So when I graduated, I graduated in 2018, and it was just really difficult to find such a niche position without a ton of experience. Even though I had my internships and that was really great. As Chloe knows, probably it's really difficult to get a job at a museum because there's so few positions available, and especially if you're wanting something as niche as I just want to be like in the marketing department. I know that's what I want to do. So I applied to a lot. I got some interviews, but it didn't really end up leading anywhere. So I just thought, okay, what can I do in the meantime for my, early career that will set me up for this career that I want? And I landed at an agency and I did social media there. And it was really interesting getting that social media experience in an agency setting because in school, Again, I graduated in 2018. It wasn't that long ago, but I think there are a lot more social media courses available
Yeah.
at universities. And there just wasn't at that time. So getting that real world experience was actually perfect. And I'm not sure that I would have the job that I have today if it weren't for that. So I am kind of grateful for not landing at a museum right away. So I went on to work there until 2020. And of course, as everyone knows, in 2020, there was a major world event. And unfortunately, I was laid off, as many Americans
Many of
will.
us.
Yes. And of course, it was absolutely devastating. At that time, it was in the summer that I got laid off, and I just didn't really know what to do with myself. Of course, no one was hiring. So I kind of just decided I would do some freelance work where I could until I landed another full time role. And in the meantime, I was really interested in vintage interior decorations. So I started a little Instagram account. I think that's how Chloe found me. I'm
It
not
is
sure.
how I found you. Yes.
So it's called Cuckoo Tilly. I don't do it anymore, unfortunately, just don't have the time for it. But it was a really amazing thing to do. And I think a lot of people who are interested in art kind of have that overlap of like loving interior decoration, vintage
Yes.
things as well. It's history, it's visual. So it really just made sense for me at the time. So I ended up landing another job at an agency, and then I was there for maybe 6 months. I had no intention of leaving or anything, but I got an email one day and it was a job opening at the Kimball Art Museum. And I realized when I was applying for jobs back in 2018, when I first graduated for college, I had done all the thing where you sign up for future notifications of
Yes.
job openings in
Yes.
certain departments. And you don't ever think anything's going to come of that or it'll ever strike you at the right time, really. But I had never turned that notification off for the Kimball. And it was digital content coordinator. It fit my skill set, interest to a T. So I was like, I have to apply. And of course, I got the role. As you know, I am here today. And it's been amazing. I started working there in June of 2021. So it's been almost a year and a half that I've been there.
Happy
So that's a
anniversary.
very long and unconventional story of how I got into the museum field.
Love it. Love it. Well, I love that you had that non-museum experience and transitioned into it because that's a big question we get all the time is, I haven't started out. And I guess, could you tell us a little bit about the agency side of things versus what you do now and how obviously there's going to be some similarities, but maybe talk about how they're different. What is that experience like?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And one I love to talk about with people who are early in their career and they're not sure if they want to sort of go the agency route or working in house somewhere. So, with agencies, it depends on, what kind of agency. My first job was at a really big agency. So I was one of 40 people like doing the same job. And so that was really interesting. I think it's nice to be somewhere like that early in your career when you're kind of figuring out what exactly you're interested in and you want the support of a really big team. And as far as the work goes for a big agency like that, you're working with so many different types of clients. So, it really solidifies what fields you're interested in if you know that you want to pivot to in house in the future. For me, I always knew I wanted to find my way back to the museum field eventually. I didn't think it would happen as quickly as it did, to be honest. And I'm really grateful for that. I think I just got really lucky with seeing that email notification come through that day. But yeah, that's what working at a big agency was like. And then a smaller agency, I was just running the social media for all of the clients in the agency myself. And that gave me a lot of that, I think, managerial experience that was really important for helping me nail the job interview and get the job at the museum. Because, of course, at the museum, I'm the only person doing the social media. So
Yeah.
we do have interns, paid interns, that help generate content, and I manage their work, review it, but it's really just me doing it. So it's very fun.
And for maybe those who aren't super familiar with the structure of the Kimball, like how many full time staff would you say, to give insight into maybe the context of like how big of a role the a digital coordinator has
Mhm.
in the realm of the entire staff?
The whole museum, yes. Well, the Kimball is it's quite a small museum, though it is world renowned, has a fantastic collection. It's small. It's here in Fort Worth, Texas, so just an hour outside of Dallas. If you're not familiar with the area, it is the fastest growing city in Texas right now. Very interesting. But the staff at the museum is about, I think, 180. It's probably around there. For the marketing team, I have a boss who is the director of marketing, and then I have a PR manager that I work with, and two designers, and then an intern. So it's a really small department. We do balance, of course, we're producing a lot of work. So we contract with other agencies to help us with various digital marketing needs, design needs even. So it's really a small team though that's in house.
Yeah. So, what would a day to day, what are your responsibilities and a day to day look like? And what does it look like interacting with all the rest of the staff as for, you know, as much as you're doing with, a smaller team?
hmm So, being in marketing at a museum is really interesting. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for any other department. I think marketing is unique because you work with basically every department, whereas some departments might not have crossover with others. We have crossover with basically everyone. And it's, our jobs to promote the work we're doing. In terms of exhibitions, the permanent collection, conservation, events, education, so many different things. So working with everyone it's my favorite part of the job. I don't think any one day can really be the same. My essential duties as digital content coordinator, and I think this really varies museum to museum, but I basically manage everything digital. As I said, the social media accounts for the museum, which is my favorite part of the job if I have to pick favorite children. But I also manage web content, email campaigns, as well as video multimedia projects. So those are my basic buckets that I work from.
And what would say the process of creating, let's say there's an exhibition coming up, what does that kind of look like on the back end of preparing for a project versus, maybe you're working for like an agency that has like a product coming out? How does that differ in the museum realm?
It If I had to describe it visually, it would be the episode of SpongeBob where all the little SpongeBobs are running around and things are on fire and computers are crashing. That's what it feels like. On the outside, I know it does not look like that at all, but we work in marketing. We work very hard to make it appear that way.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. We actually have an exhibition opening in a week from today. So I'm about to get into that week before an exhibition opening. I personally, it's my favorite part of the year. Twice a year, I get to experience this feeling of euphoria, kind of, before an exhibition opens. Of course, as Chloe knows, it's so much work leading up to an exhibition for like months. We're not thinking about this the month that it opens. We're thinking about this 6 months before it opens. So there's a ton of planning that goes into it on the marketing side. When it comes to advertising, things that are like billboards, magazine ad placements, things like that. That's not my realm. That would be my coworker. But on my side, it's planning all of the like social media campaigns and what video content are we going to do for this? Are we going to do a special series? Or are we going to do something a little more like unconventional? Or is it going to be static posts, stories, whatever? So yeah, it's a lot of work, but a lot of fun. I love I think one of my favorite parts of the job is getting to see all of the art before it opens to the public.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
such a cool feeling.
So much fun. Do you have a favorite campaign you've worked on so far? That we could, by the way, I'm going to put the link to the Kimball's socials in the description so you can see, which is cool about Emily, is you can actually see her work.
Yes, it is on display. And we do post every day. So it's a lot of content that I've produced in the past like year and a half that I've been here. So my favorite campaign, I would say it's actually the one I'm working on right now. Am really lucky, I think, to have started when I did last year, because this year is the museum's 50th anniversary, which if you work at a museum or, I mean, really any big company, you know that the 50th anniversary of anything is a really big deal. And to get to work on something as big as that, it's, bigger budget, bigger campaigns. It's just a lot more to work with than in a normal year. So I really like what we are about to post. Our 50th anniversary is on October 4th, so it's coming up really soon. And we have a video series that's coming out that I'm really excited for. I've gotten to work on the back end from like conceptualizing the idea all the way to the videos actually they're being edited right now, and then they'll be premiered on October 4th. So that has been something that I've been really proud of, and I'm really excited to see come to fruition really soon.
Oh, so much fun. Back, stepping back a little bit, when applying to your current position, transitioning into the museum background, obviously you did have the art history minor, and you had the agency side of things. But when applying to jobs, what did you notice maybe were skills that they were looking for in the museum field that really maybe made you stand out, or did you notice looking at jobs that the museum field was
Mhm.
looking for versus the agency side of things?
Right. So I think a reason why I was a really competitive candidate for this role was my social media experience from working at those agencies. The museum, I think before me, there was a social media presence, but it wasn't like it was now. And I think for such an incredible museum, it deserved a total, like, not a rebrand, but close to a rebrand. It needed attention. And I think when my boss was, I don't want to speak for her, of course, but we have talked at length about this, of course. So I think this is pretty close to the truth. Um, I think when she was, interviewing me and talking to me, that was top of mind for her. Knowing that area, digital marketing in general for the museum, needed a fresh pair of eyes, was really important in picking me. And like I said, I think without that agency experience, if I was, coming straight from college, I don't know that I would have been as competitive as I was. So.
Yeah, totally. So, being in the digital media space and specifically, social media, trends are changing like minute by minute. How does how do you see the museum fitting into that with thinking about audiences and your museum audience isn't always the same as like your Gen Z or on TikTok. So how do you see the museum social media world right now, and where do you see it going in its role in the future?
That's a great question and something I love to talk about and theorize about. I think I could teach a college course on museum social media theory at this
Please,
point. So
please.
I really keep a finger on the pulse. The first thing I do every morning when I get to work is I get my coffee and then I scroll on the museum's Instagram feed and I see what all of the other museums are doing. So museums like I think the Getty has a really fantastic approach to kind of what you were talking about, keeping up with trends in a way that is very specifically their voice. And this is something, again, I think my agency experience really lended itself well to, is being able to really think about what is the museum's voice, and what is something that would make sense for the museum to post versus not make sense for the museum to post. I know it sounds strange, but thinking of a museum as a brand,
Mhm.
even though a museum is a nonprofit, of course, really it is a brand as well. So that's something that I had to really consider when I first started the job. Was, of course, I want to do all of the trendy things, and the whim of the internet can go a different way every minute, like you said. But I had to kind of figure out, like, okay, what makes sense for us to play into. I think a good example is, whenever Noodle, the dog, the Bones No
Yeah.
Bones, last year was a huge thing. We had the perfect artwork to go with it. It's an ancient Chinese dog. It's called Standing Dog, and it looks exactly like a pug. So I thought, okay, this makes sense for us to participate in, versus some other things might not make sense just with, what our collection is. We don't collect American works or anything past like 1940s. So we're not going to be able to hop on every trend, and that's okay. And it's really fun whenever we can, and people really enjoy it. I love making memes.
Yes.
I, I had to really ease the senior staff into that, but now they love them. So
E- Emily's memes are my favorite every time. I think I message you every time you put one up. They're my favorite. Yes. So
so much fun.
how do you get senior management to how do you build that trust to get them on board with these new trends? Because usually, I won't speak to all of them, but usually some senior staff can be on the older side or not up with
Mhm.
all the trends. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I think it really takes data to show them what works and what doesn't. We have some senior staff that are very, hashtag very online, and they get it. Like they were like, yeah, I know who Noodle is. Versus some senior staff, they're like, why are we posting about a dog on TikTok on our Instagram? Like, I don't get it. And it really takes showing those people in particular. Last time we did a meme, look at the engagement on this versus like our average day-to-day post. Look at how well this did. And I mean, the numbers don't lie. I think with marketing and with, digital content specifically, it's viewed as a very creative job, and it is very, very creative, but it's really a numbers job as well, because you have to have that data to back up, what you're producing. And inevitably, people love the memes online. So, of course, the numbers are going to support them. And then I get to make more.
Yes, and we want more. We all want more. So since you're in such a niche area, what advice would you give to somebody who says maybe they're just going into school and they say, okay, I want to work in this really niche area? What skills would you talked about the advertising side of things. So, what are like those hands on experiences, skills? Um, how would you advise somebody going about it? And especially because it's something really niche.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I think social media is just becoming something that universities are taking seriously as a career field. So I do think, at this point, if someone is, going into their freshman year right now, what I would say to them is, seeking education from the internet. There's tons of free resources on TikTok, on Instagram. There are things like this, like your museum careers series, like it's free and it's accessible. So I would say whatever you're interested in, you can probably find someone talking about it online if you can't find a university class that's going to teach you. And then, of course, internships are really important. I do understand that in the museum career, a lot of internships are unfortunately unpaid. So that can make it really difficult. But if you can make it work, it's really worth it to get that hands-on experience. You're just going to learn so much more that you wouldn't in a classroom. And then I think for my career path specifically for social media, I think I don't know if this is a skill that could be developed rather than just a natural predisposition for loving social media.
Mm.
I always have. I was a very early adopter of Instagram. Me and my friend would like go and do photo shoots,
Ah, love
um,
it.
and then put them on Instagram and get like 2 likes, and we were like, yes.
Yes.
So I was doing that really early, and I have always just loved keeping up with all of those online trends. TikTok especially. I think a lot of people doubted that at first, but I was all for it. I was like, this is more than just dances. Like I can see this
Mhm.
pretty early. So I think if you want to work in social media for a museum specifically, go follow all of the museums on social media. Have them in like your little favorites thing on
Mhm.
Instagram, or have a little like saved folder on your TikTok, whatever, um, whatever platform you're using. Just have a way to like have some time every day to see what they're posting. And it's really good and engaging content, and you'll learn so much for it. So, once you get into that position where you're looking for jobs and you're in interviews, you can be really informed and like and know what you're talking about.
Mhm. So, what would you maybe advise on transitional skills or I'm sorry, transferable skills if somebody, say, maybe has some marketing experience, maybe not social media, um, or they're working in a more traditional field and wanting to move to the art museum side of things? What are some skills, ways to maybe write a cover letter, things to emphasize that you would look for if you were going to hire?
Yeah, and I actually have had experience with this, looking at interns to hire. It's something that I've had a hand in my time at the short time at the Kimball so far. So what I really look for is, there's the obvious, like, do you have anything that would point towards, having skills that make sense for marketing at the museum. And if you do, which most people do if they're applying to a marketing position, then I would say passion is like the very close second that I look for. Like, why do you want to be here? Because the museum industry is it's so niche, and to be frank, you're not going to make the most money working entry level at a museum. So you like, why do you want to be here, and are you going to come in every day and like be a part of the team and really contribute something beyond just going and doing your 9 to 5? I think that's what really sets people apart, and I think it's something that set me apart. Again, when I was interviewing for the Kimball, was like, I want to be here. I moved from Austin to Fort Worth for the job. I was willing to do that. I think that demonstrated a lot of passion, and
Mhm.
so I think that's really important. I wouldn't say make your entire cover letter about how much you want the job, or how much you need to talk a little bit more about your skill set and everything and how that can transfer. But definitely add a few lines in there that are really authentic. Don't make it copy and paste. Like, do you have a connection to the museum? Or do you have a connection to the type of art that's at the museum that you can really talk about? I think that would catch someone's eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say for somebody who wants to get into this that an art background of some sort, whether it's studio art or art history, is required to or recommended for this particular type of marketing?
I would say not necessarily studio art. I don't really have any studio art experience. I always say that I love supporting the arts, but I am not an artist myself. But art history for sure. I think it kind of goes my answer to this would kind of go hand in hand with my last answer, which is if you had the means to study art history in college, you would have, and that would make you a good fit because it would demonstrate that you really do love art
Mm.
and you really are here for it. And I think with marketing at a museum, you do need to know some of those background basics of art history. It's going to help you so much. Whenever we have an exhibition opening, we have the curators that give us tours, talk about the exhibition, tell us absolutely everything and more that we need to know about it. But just having that background knowledge really gives you that step up, and I think that's so important, can't be understated. And if you didn't study art history in college and you're at a point where you want to get into the museum field now, I think what you could do is just go to museums in your area
Mhm.
or go to their Instagrams. Like you will learn there's so much great educational content just in those captions.
Yeah.
I know the Googles for sure. So you can still learn. It's not too late.
Yeah.
I just think it's very important for this field.
Yeah. Obviously, because my background is education, I'm really curious about this. Speaking of, you listen to the curators and you take that all in. Your
Mhm.
audience for the Kimball is obviously, or all museums, is much wider
Mm.
than your art historian, right? How do you approach writing copy for a post after you take all that in from your curator? How do you make it accessible to the public? I would love to hear about that.
This is a great question. It definitely takes some finessing. I think art historians can give me a description for a piece of art, and I'll understand it because I have that art history background. But I know, like, the average person is not going to understand, what chiaroscuro means. So I have to think about, like, really take a step back, and that's where maybe my education can kind of impede sometimes, because I'm like, oh,
Mm.
everyone knows what that is, but then I'm like, nope, not everyone knows what it is. So what can I do to help them understand? How can I explain it in the easiest possible way? And I actually I ask our education department sometimes, for their kids materials. I
Uh,
don't want to sound I don't want to
yeah.
sound bad saying that. It's really interesting. The kids materials, the way they break it down, it's actually really helpful for the social media
Yeah.
because anyone can understand that. And it doesn't sound like it's written for kids. Like, it just sounds like it's written for anyone to understand. And I think that's why I do love social media for museums so much, is that it's my job to not make art and museums so scary.
Mhm.
I want to make it something that anyone can come into the museum and understand or relate to in some way. So whereas, like, you would think the memes, for example, are a little silly, and oh, are they making the art, is it downgrading the art to make it into a meme? I would argue that absolutely not. It's making it relatable. It's making it something that people are like, oh, I understand how that feels. So
Yeah.
now I understand why the artist in, year 1400 would paint something like this, because I get it today.
Yes.
So, yeah, it is a task sometimes to kind of translate that material from the curators, from conservation, into a very digestible format for the social media, but it's worth it for sure.
Yeah. And I think having, as you said, having the understanding of what that is to begin with, um, you know, is also probably a benefit. As you said, right? You need to have at least some understanding of the work to be able to break it down, right? Because then you know what is important about this, right? That's awesome.
Right.
Okay, this was a curveball, but you just were talking about like the meme making it more accessible, and there's this discussion, right, of like, is it dumbing it down or is it watering it down? So I want to know your opinion on like Instagram photos within the museum, right? The selfies with artworks.
Hmm.
Some people say it's just like a social media thing. What are your opinions on it? Does it bring more engagement with the work? I want to hear your views on this.
Yes. Okay. I love it. I keep saying that every question you ask, I'm like, I love this question because I really do. I think about it a lot. Of course, we repost like a lot of visitor photos. And so I've thought about it plenty. There are some museums that don't allow photography for this purpose. They really want to encourage a meaningful, cell phone-less experience with the visitor and the art. And I get that. I understand, where those museums are coming from. But I would also argue that, if someone's coming and let's say they're getting dressed up with their friend and they want to go take cute little photos in the museum's galleries, we have plenty of people that do that at the Kimball. I would argue that, well, they're coming to the museum, whereas they might not have before. And while they're there, it's very, very, very likely that they're going to learn something or be exposed to something, see a new perspective on, some event or some school of thought or subject matter that they wouldn't see if they didn't come to the museum. So while they might not post a long Instagram caption about, wow, like I had such a breakthrough in understanding like this artist today, they might have, and maybe it just looks like them in a beautiful dress
Mhm,
in front of some Renaissance works, and that's okay.
mhm,
I think that as long as it's getting people in the doors, getting them to come to a museum, and the Kimball is, for example, the permanent collection is always free to see, so people can come and go as they wish. Um, I think that's great. I know there's plenty of people that would disagree with me on that, but it is my strong opinion that it is okay to take Instagram content in the museum, and it's not dumbing the artwork down or making it. It's just a different experience. It's almost
yeah.
like art in itself. It's like a new
Yeah.
art form, photo shoots in a museum. So
Love it. Love it, love it. And I think also we're both we've done it ourselves, and I think we can say like, oh well, but we're like the art appreciators, we're not just doing it for the shoot, but who knows what people's intentions are. And
mhm.
you've probably seen this, but there's like a study that shows like if you take pictures of an artwork, I was reading this for like an education article. If you take pictures of an artwork, especially like detail shots, you actually in like embed it in your memory way more.
Ah,
So
I
there's
love that.
actually like this plus side to it. Um, I love it. I'm going to open it up to see if anybody has any questions for Emily. And while we wait for those to come in, I would love to hear if there are any like trends that you see museum social media going in or trends you would like to see it jump on.
Yeah, okay, there's a few. So I think something that's really top of mind for everyone and probably every industry right now, but especially in the museum industry, I've talked with some of my counterparts at museums doing social media, is reels and video, short form video content. With I would say 99.9% of museums, if not 100%, our content goes through a lot of scrutiny. It's something that we have to do. Like for example, I do all of my content a month in advance,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be reviewed by the appropriate senior staff members that need to get their eyes on it.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like jumping on those short form video trends on Reels or TikTok, it's really difficult because we go through so many levels of reviewing. But I think it's really important for museums to make that work, to engage with their audiences in a meaningful way and stay in people's feeds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I'm kind of working on doing more of for the museum is pre-scheduling that short form video content so we can stay
Yes.
relevant.
Yeah. And how do you, this is like going back a little bit, but how do you balance maybe that educational element with those like memes, short form, like trendy videos? What do you see like that balance looking like, or in your ideal mind?
Right. So
Feel
I don't have an exact like percentage breakdown necessarily. I could probably, if I like thought about it a little bit, I could probably come up with one. But I would say it's for the most part, there needs to be a little bit of education with every post when it comes to museums. And it doesn't have to be a long essay. Sometimes it's a really long caption, but for the most part, people have really short attention spans. And so, how can you like get their attention right away? And sometimes it's like leading with a question like, "Did you know that Artemisia Gentileschi was born on this day 400 years ago?" And then, they're learning something about this artist that they might not have known about. So, educational content is always like the most important thing, I would say. And, you know, followed by inspirational content is kind of what we call um, in this social media world. We say, like, okay, does your content educate, inspire, or inform?
Mhm.
And um, in the inform part, I take to mean for the museum is kind of like, oh, we have this event going on, mark your calendars kind of thing. So there's always going to be a little bit of that, but education is really at the front of my mind. It's just how you present those educational opportunities that I think makes the content feel very like varied.
Got it. And so you really see those like trends really being a way to portray those education values.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I'm always just kind of thinking like, okay, for example, I'll go back to my example of the bones, no bones. Is, hey, isn't it funny that we have, this ancient Chinese dog sculpture that looks exactly like Noodle? But then also, like, did you know, like, this is why they chose this kind of dog to be like their guard dog back in the day,
yeah,
back in ancient times. So it's a little bit of education mixed in with a little bit of fun.
I love it. Love it. As, obviously somebody who loves social media myself and coming from the education side of things, love it. Love your mission so much. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I'm going to have all of Emily's information in the description. Her social media, the Kimball social media, and this will be up for anybody who is not catching this live. I'll keep it on my channel. And again, thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you, Chloe.